Testing, testing. Yep, we got sound. Good morning, church family and friends. We're almost out of June. Just one more Sunday, and we'll be out of June. And then summer's what? Well, it's not quite over, but it's going to get hotter. Hey, next week, guaranteed a cool week. Or at least less than 90. Yeah. Good morning to everyone who has turned on their Zoom channel or are watching on YouTube. Today is the 22nd of June, 2025. And our study this quarter is on sacred altars and holy offerings. And we will be looking at what Isaac did. We covered a little bit of Isaac being offered up by Abraham as a test to find out whether his faith was strong. And then God intervenes and provides a ram caught in a thicket. And instead of Isaac being slaughtered for sacrifice, the ram was. You know, that must have changed Isaac's life, because he was quite willing to die. Abraham was quite willing to obey the voice of God. And because of that kind of faith, we have the faith of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so this is about Isaac calls on the name of the Lord when he builds an altar after he pitches his tent and has dug a few wells. The text that we'll be using in the lesson is 24 to 33 of chapter 26, but I've included the earlier verses all the way down to verse 35, and I'll just give you a little hint. It involves Esau. So if you look at the slide here's Isaac in the scriptures. You start with the promised. Isaac is promised in Genesis 17. Isaac is separated from Ishmael, Genesis 21. Abraham offers up his son, Genesis 22. Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, goes wife shopping, and he becomes a shadchan. You know what a shadchan is? Matchmaker, matchmaker, make me a match. Yeah, from Fiddler on the Roof. A shadchan is someone who tries to match up a bride with a groom. That's the first recorded instance in Genesis 24 of an arranged marriage. And then chapter 25, Isaac takes Rebekah, and of course Abraham passes away. Isaac now dwells in the city of Gerar, or the area of Gerar, and that's where we will spend our time today. So here on the map, if you look at Gerar with a question, there's a possibility that it was not there, but was further southeast. Here is Beersheba, which figures predominantly in the lives of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And there is Gerar where we think it might be. So we're going to do the scriptures that came before the text we'll study today. Now there was a famine in the land. It's interesting that a lot of times a famine occurs and God is involved in directing or blessing his people or causing his people to go in a certain direction. There was a famine in the land besides the former famine that was in the days of Abraham. That's when Abraham went down to Egypt. And Egypt was known what? As the breadbasket of the world. And if you will recall, Joseph, he became the person's second only to Pharaoh. His task was to build granaries. There would be 7 years of plenty, so use the plenty to build up the reserves, and then 7 years of famine. So Isaac went to Gerar to Abimelech, king of the Philistines. And the Lord appeared to him and said, we don't know in which form the Lord appeared to him. Don't go down to Egypt like your dad did. He said, but dwell in the land which I shall tell you, sojourn in this land. What is a sojourn? Yep. Israel was not a country at this particular stage. They will become a country later on. They will spend a big chunk of their time, 430 odd years in Egypt, and some of that time they were serving as slaves, not guests. So the Lord appeared to him, don't go down to Egypt, but dwell in the land which I shall tell you. Sojourn in the land, and I will be with you and will bless you. For you and to your offspring I will give these lands. How can God do that when there's people already living on the land? Because who owns the land? God. Sojourn in that land. The idea of a sojourn is they were still living as tent dwellers. And so sojourn in the land, and I'll be with you. I will bless you. For to you and to your offspring, and I will give these lands and will establish the oath, the promise that I swore to Abraham your father. The reference to going down to Egypt is found in Genesis 12, verse 10 and following. That's where Abraham and Sarah go down to Egypt. And what does Abraham do in order to protect Sarah? He said, oh, she's my sister. I'm trying to figure out why this happens, not just once, not just twice, but 3 times. It happens again in Genesis 21 when Abraham meets King Abimelech of the Philistines. And he says, this lady, who is very beautiful, is my sister. And of course, someone comes and brings a dream or tells someone very important, such as King Abimelech, don't ever go near her. Don't touch her. Because anyone who does, you're a dead man. So he makes an edict. Anyone who goes near or tries to touch this lady shall be punished by death. So there it is in Genesis 21, 22 to 34. Now just look at that. Now there was a famine in the land besides the former famine. Famines create pressure. You remember There was a famine in the land in the days of when Joseph was lost and thought to be dead. He ended up becoming second only to Pharaoh. There was a famine in the land that caused his family to come to Egypt. And it was all because God wanted to reveal a plan to save not only the family, but the nation, and also to be instrumental in saving the people of Egypt that Joseph was serving. Anyone remember his name in what they called it in Egyptian? Was it Zaphanath Paneah? That's a mouthful. Try that 10 times. So, in those days, Abraham also experienced a famine. Isaac goes to Gerar, to Abimelech. Is this the same Abimelech, or is it another Abimelech? Abimelech means he is the king. The Philistines were known as sea people. So they were all along the coast, especially Gaza in particular. That's one of the regions.
There was an Abimelech that was Gideon's son.
Yes. So it's a popular name. Certainly, I won't rule out that this is not the same guy that Isaac is meeting, but I think it's a different king. There's 100 years of a difference there. So, and the Lord appeared to him and said, don't go down to Egypt, dwell in the land which I will tell you. Is Isaac going around telling everybody, this land is ours? No, we don't hear that from Isaac. Isaac is a different kettle of fish. He is a man of faith, and he is not a warrior per se. He is a man who lives quietly and tries to listen to the voice of God and be faithful to God. So, the promise is given, the same one given to Abraham is now about to be promised to Isaac. It says, so, sojourn in the land, I will bless you, you and your offspring, I'll give these lands and will establish the oath that I swore to Abraham. By the way, the city of Beersheba is also known as the well of the oath, or the well of seven. Take your pick. So, verses 4 through 7, I will multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven. Sounds familiar? It's a repeat of what God had said to Abraham. I will give to your offspring all these lands, and to your offspring all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. That's a big promise. That's a promise locked towards the future. Because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, kept my commandments, kept my statutes, and kept my laws. So Isaac settled in Gerar. When the men of the place asked him about his wife, he said, oh, she's my sister. For he feared to say my wife, thinking lest the men of this place should kill me because of Rebekah, because she was attractive in appearance. Some translations say she was fair, she was beautiful. Takes you back to Genesis 12, verse 13, verse 17, and down in Egypt. Takes you back to Genesis 20 and verse 2 and following. Same thing happens. Is it like father? Is it like son like father? We don't know. So, verses 8 and 11, when he had been there a long time. How long is a long time? We're not talking weeks. We're talking months. A long period of time. Abimelech, the king of the Philistines, looked out of a window and saw Isaac laughing. By the way, doesn't that take you back to Sarah? She laughed. And Isaac's name means laughter. So here Isaac and Rebekah are laughing together. Oh, why can't brother and sister laugh together? Yeah, but he says, she's my sister, not my wife.
That's a euphemism. Something more than laughter.
Something more than laughter. Abimelech called Isaac, not on the phone. He called him, summoned him to come up. He said, behold, she is your wife. How then could you say, she is my sister? Why did you do that? There has to be an explanation. Isaac said to him, because I thought, lest I die because of her. Abimelech said, what is this you've done to us? And so he's thinking about all of the possibilities that could happen by a lie to cover up that she's actually his wife. You're making matters worse. He says, what is this you've done? One of the people might have easily lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us. So Abimelech warned all the people, saying, whoever touches this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. Now, behind the scenes, what is God doing here? Is he not protecting the one he is blessing, even when he is weak to tell a lie? A lie is a lie, isn't it? Can you justify lying? Well, if you thought it would save somebody's life, would you tell a lie? And what do we do today? Oh, it was just a wee white one. Chop it up, dice it, put it in a blender. It still is a what? It's a lie. So, whoever touches this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. So, we're getting close to our study text. And Isaac sowed in that land and reaped in the same year 100-fold. And the Lord blessed him. And the man became rich and gained more and more until he became very wealthy. Is that the equivalent of being a billionaire, Alex? So he had many possessions of flocks and herds. They measured wealth by your cattle, by your sheep, by your goats. I'm not going to say camels. Don't know about camels yet. So he says, Abimelech's looking at this man's increase in wealth. And of course, does he have an army? I don't think so. Isaac doesn't have an army per se, but he has a lot of people.
Same thing happens with Jacob and his father-in-law Laban. Jacob's wealth increases where Laban's and his other sons does not.
Yes.
They're jealous.
We're just talking there about Laban's wealth started to go down while Jacob's started to increase by the blessings of God. So now the Philistines, this is what they did when Abraham died. The Philistines had stopped up the wells and filled it with earth, and all the wells that his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham, his father. Water means survival. Water means power. Water means survival and wealth and everything that goes with it. If you're going to have herds, you got to have water. Where they were living springs were an oddity. They do come up in this particular instance, but there were wells and there were reservoirs, places that you collected water. So, Abimelech said to Isaac, and this seems so lame, go away. Go away from us, for you are much mightier than we. In the language of the day, get out. We don't want you around here. You've become too powerful. You know, that's what the Pharaohs thought of God's people down there in Goshen. They were growing and multiplying, and then they thought, well, we'll start to reduce the population by killing all male children. And that didn't work. And then they had slavery, and that didn't work. So Abimelech said, go away, for you are much mightier than we. But the Lord continues to bless Isaac. So I'm going to give Abimelech some credit here because he's watching what this man Isaac does. You know, sometimes the greatest sermons that could ever be preached or lessons that could ever be taught is the statement of our lives. Give us a reason of the hope that you have. Tell us why God is blessing you and not us. So, as Isaac departed there and encamped in the valley of Gerar, he settled there. In other words, he put down his tent pegs. Going to live there. And also, what does he start to do? First thing after the tent is dig a well. So Isaac dug again the wells of water that had been dug in the days of Abraham, his father. He reopened them. He says, which the Philistines had stopped after the death of his father. And he gave them the names that his father had given them. But when Isaac's servants dug in the valley of Gerar and found there a well of spring water, that's more valuable. Guess what? The water is ours, they said. So he called the name of the well Issac, because they had contended with him. So each of the wells from here on out are given a name, and a name suggests something that happened between Isaac's people and the people of Gerar. So, Genesis 26, 24 to 33. Water wars. People fight over water, don't they? It still continues today. So Isaac redug and restored the wells of his father Abraham. That's Genesis 26:18. Issac means the well of dispute. Sitnah, the well of hostility. Rehoboth, the well of peace and rest, or when Isaac dug that well, it was the third well. It is, God has made a place for us. And then Sheba, the well of the oath. Now, promises of God to Isaac. Come on, say them with me. I will be with you. I will bless you and your offspring. I will give these lands, or it should have said you, and I will establish you. In other words, God is reiterating the promise that he made to his father Abraham. So, God always keeps his promises. Now, a covenant promise, Genesis 26, 24 to 25. There is a remembrance of a promise made before. Then there is Isaac's response in verse 25. Look here. Then they dug another well. This is after Issac. They dug another well. Okay, we'll dig another well. And they quarreled over that also. and they called it Sitnah. And he moved from there and dug another well. Okay, I'll take my shovel somewhere else. So he gave up those two wells because they were causing problems. Now remember, he could have acted like a warrior and defended his rights, and he said, these are ours because God said. They don't know about God, but he doesn't act like somebody like Lamech. You know, Lamech said, if Cain is going to be avenged 7 times, if anybody offends me, I want to be avenged 70 times. In other words, more violence. Isaac is not a man of violence, folks. So he moved from there and he dug another well, and they did not quarrel over it. That's the well of Rehoboth. So he called its name Rehoboth, for now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land. Now think about those wells. How differently it could have gone had swords been drawn. A war got started. You know, it seems like nothing changes, does it? There's always been wars over water and land. So, for now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land. For there he went to Beersheba, and the Lord appeared to him the same night and said, I am the God of your father. I am the God of Abraham your father. Fear not, for I am with you. I will bless you. I will multiply your offspring for my servant Abraham's sake. So, here is a map that shows the area that we're looking at, although they traveled widely in the land. But he settled back down at Gerar and also made a home at Beersheba. Now, wells, living springs, and cisterns, those are 3 things that people would do in that kind of land. They dig wells, they'd look for living springs, and they would also collect water, like this. Importance of water rights. Look at this. They found this just recently in Jerusalem. Ancient cistern dated to the first temple period, found in Jerusalem. This would have been around 950 before the birth of Christ. This is all part of the Gihon spring. They would collect water from a living spring and bring it into the city and collect it so that the people could withstand a siege, and they'd always have fresh water for the temple and things like that. There's Hezekiah's tunnel. The pool of Siloam, the Gihon spring, and it made the difference. Has anyone gone to the tunnel of Hezekiah? I think Mike and Bev might have made that trip, and maybe Beth and Ken Fozen. Now,
Wasn't it miraculous where one group started at one end and another group started, and they met perfectly
perfectly.
at that time without any instruments?
Yeah. How did they do that? Huh? God. Promises kept. There is the threat of violence, verses 26 to 27. There is the making of a peace, a treaty, an agreement, a contract, a covenant. Covenants and treaties and agreements made between men are often broken because one side or the other cannot stay true to the terms. There is this divine provision. God is in the mix. Now, Genesis 26:27 says, when Isaac and Abimelech, they decided instead of choosing to go to war, what did they choose? Peace. So, Genesis 26, 25, 27. Warner, could you read that for us from the screen?
So he built an altar there and called upon the name of the Lord, and he pitched his tent there. And there Isaac's servants dug a well. When Abimelech went to him from Gerar with Ahuzah, his advisor, and Michal, the commander of his army, Isaac said to him, "Why have you come to me, seeing that you hate me and have sent me away from you?"
Yeah, in other words, I hope you're not trying to start a war here because, nobody is bothering us in this well. Nobody came and got mad at us. He's loaded for bear, but King Abimelech has seen something, and it's important. So, Royce, could you read 28 and 31, down to 31?
They said, "We see plainly that the Lord has been with you." So we said, "Let there be a sworn pact between us, between you and us, and let us make a covenant with you, that you will do us no harm, just as we have not touched you and have done to you nothing, but good, and have sent you away in peace. You are now blessed in the Lord." So he made them a feast, and they ate and drank. In the morning they rose early and exchanged oaths, and Isaac sent them on their way, and they departed from him in peace.
Wow. How did that happen? Generally, you'd come with all of your army advisors and lots of armed men. They want to make peace. And they make peace by sealing it with a meal together. And everyone went home in peace. Isaac is a perfect example of the shalom of God. That same day, Isaac's servants came. This is verses 32 to 35. And I've included 35 because it's important here, because this is another challenge for another day for Isaac and Rebekah. The same day, Isaac's servants came and told him about a well that they had dug and said to him, "We've found water." And he called it Sheba. And therefore, the name of the city is called Beersheba. So to this day, when Esau, now was sidebar, when he was 40 years of age, by the way, that's the same age as when Isaac meets and marries Rebekah. When he was 40 years of age, he took Judith, the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, to be his wife, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon, not Musk, the Hittite, and they made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah. Not the three, but the two. They made life difficult for Isaac's parents. That's another challenge for another day. How will this man of peace make peace with his daughters-in-law? So, Beersheba, home of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Here is Beersheba, the well of seven, or the well of oath. It's an unusual shape, and they've been digging on it for quite some time. I'd love to do a dig like that, wouldn't you? So, three things to note. Genesis 26:3. Dick, could you read that verse?
Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you, and will bless you. For to you and to your offspring I will give all these lands, and I will establish the oath that I swore to Abraham your father.
Sandy, could you read verse 24? Then verse 28, Dorothy.
They said, "You see plainly that the Lord
sometimes they would slaughter an animal right down the middle, and the two parties would walk in between the slaughtered carcass of the animal. And it is, may worse happen to you if you do not keep this treaty or pact. That was the idea of walking in between. This was what they call a parity pact of equals. Abimelech and his people, and Isaac and his people. We see that God is blessing you. Maybe they are wondering, maybe God now will bless us because we have chosen to make a pact with someone that has been blessed by God, such as Isaac. A man of faith, a man of peace. He built an altar and he called on the name of the Lord. Now, God is faithful to Isaac like he was faithful to Abraham, and we believe that will be the same as we move on to Jacob. Now, treaties and friendships. I was born in 1949. Anyone else born in 1949? Ralph? 1849? No. 1949, I was totally unaware that there would be a pact after the war called NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. The key provision of that treaty was collective defense. We'll come to your aid if you're attacked. We will come the other way if you are attacked. The countries whose side would consider an attack against one is an attack against all. The treaty, bound by its signers across generations, offered future and security. So, while NATO is unique, similar binding arguments have been used throughout history. Have you read your American history lately? How have we done on treaties made with the indigenous nations? Good or bad? Thumbs down. We're not very good at, we say, okay, you can keep this land. Then what do? We take them on the Trail of Tears. So, in the Bible, the ancient Near East, these treaties were known as covenants. Some covenants were made between groups of people or nations. However, much of the biblical narrative of God's covenants with his people, as with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Study that carefully. Now, Donna, could you read Hebrews 8:10 through 12, just as a reminder about covenants?
For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after these days, declares the Lord. I will put my laws into their mind and write them on their hearts, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And they shall not teach each one his neighbor and each one of his brothers, saying, Know the Lord, for they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest. For I will be merciful toward their iniquities, and I will remember their sins no more.
Oh, that's back in the days of Jeremiah, by the way. So there's a big change coming, and the lasting covenant comes through Christ. They shall all know the Lord through Christ. So, lesson context. In the covenantal promises that were made to Abraham, God committed to ensuring security and growth for Abraham's family. They're not a nation, they're a family, a clan of people. Isaac was the child of God's promise. the one to inherit the covenant blessings. The parallels between those stories of Abraham and Isaac are crucial to understanding how God is faithful to us in what he has promised. Now, God reiterates the same promise as he made to Abraham, he now makes to Isaac. Isaac had new problems to deal with. Former allies had now become sworn enemies. Isaac was eager to find out whether or not God would prove to be faithful in his situation, as God had been to his father. I will call upon the Lord who is worthy to be praised, so shall I be saved from my enemies. How do you call on the name of the Lord when you encounter a difficult situation? In trying times, yes, and yet generally it heats up with family, with in-laws. You only have to go to things like Thanksgiving, that sometimes family celebrations turn out to be something else. And so we need to call on the name of the Lord when things are going wrong, when the enemy is trying to push us out, when the enemy is trying to crush us, when family disputes are just tearing us apart. We need to call upon the name of the Lord because he is the one who can help. Now, what do you think? How can we, that's you and I as believers, honor the true faith traditions that have been passed down by previous generations of believers, of God's people? How do we do that? I'm not talking about family rituals, but faith traditions. Not, well, Mom always cut the end of the ham off before she put it in the oven. And the reason, it turned out, her baking pan was not big enough. Digging down deeper, how will you encourage and support our younger generations of believers in their walk with God when they encounter the world out there? And sometimes the world is not kind to young believers. Some people find great joy in destroying the faith of a young person. So we who have been through the mill and have experience and have faith can pass on to these young people what we have learned. So, what do you think here? How should we as believers respond to an adversary who requests, let's make peace? Do we draw up the demands of what we want? Or what should we do? How do you respond to an enemy who now requests reconciliation? How do we apply that to life?
I think first you have to be able to believe that they really want reconciliation and aren't just lying to you.
Yes. You want to trust them. And you're hoping that it will improve the situation. Instead of being adversarial in a relationship, it becomes you start a relationship and you try to bring more and more into that relationship things that underscore peace. we'll stop here. The helpful scripture that I'm thinking of is Ephesians